Summer 1944. 57,000 German prisoners are assembled in the outskirts of Moscow. For 3 years, these soldiers have dreamt of parading in Moscow, but not like this, as prisoners of war. The Battle of Russia is over. The Battle of Germany is about to begin. Russian water trucks clean the streets after the Germans have passed. The last retreating German soldiers have abandoned the Crimea, the Ukraine, White Russia, the Baltic, Sevastopol, Odessa, Zhytomyr, Kiev, and Minsk. Autumn 1944. In the east, the Soviet armies have entered Poland, but they mark time outside Warsaw. Romania and Bulgaria are occupied. Tito and his partisans have liberated Belgrade. In the west, the Allies have liberated France, Belgium, and most of Holland. But several ports are still in German hands. Royan, La Rochelle, Lorient, Brest, and above all, Dunkirk. On the Western Front, held in the north by the British, in the center by the Americans, and in the south by the French, the Allies are now on Germany's doorstep. How will this last blow to the Third Reich be delivered? Opinion in the Allied Supreme Command is divided. General Eisenhower, Supreme Commander, wants to attack along the whole front. Field Marshal Montgomery wants to concentrate his forces on one point, the Ruhr, and to make a grand coup, beating the Russians with a turn of speed. This is Churchill's own old obsession. But Eisenhower won't give in. His obsession is with the lines of communication, the thousands of provision lorries which night and day carry supplies, munitions, and above all, fuel across France and Belgium. The drivers have nicknamed this infernal round trip the Red Ball Express. Mid-September 1944, the American First Army, under General Hodges, penetrates German territory and quickly discovers that this isn't going to be a military parade. In 1 month, the Americans advance only 6 miles. It's the 10th of October before they enter the first big German town, Aachen. A German division sent from East Prussia receives Hitler's personal order to defend the town, street by street, house by house. But after 10 days of fighting in the streets, the capital of Charlemagne's First Empire, the town where Hitler proclaimed the Third Reich, falls into the hands of the Americans. Eisenhower should be content. But he's still worried. Each battle costs dearly in human lives now that the Wehrmacht is defending German soil. And winter is coming. The mechanized divisions are already paralyzed by the muddy conditions. And to crown everything, American presidential elections are being held in November. Delegations of representatives and senators follow each other up to the front. Politicians are suspicious of those two glamorous generals, like Patton, for example, who slaps his soldiers' faces and gets away with it. Claire Booth Luce is a charming lady. Moreover, her husband, Henry Luce, is one of the biggest American magazine publishers, and the electors don't love those who send their boys to be slaughtered. The soldiers themselves vote on the first Tuesday in November 1944, and together with the whole of America, they choose as president Franklin Delano Roosevelt, his fourth term of office. Since October, Eisenhower has slowed up his land operations. He believes he has a trump card to play, the use of unrestricted air power, which has been embodied in one Englishman, Air Marshal Sir Arthur Harris, nicknamed Bomber Harris. He has two objectives: to break German morale and to destroy Nazi industry. For 2 years, 8,000 British and American bombers based in Britain have systematically bombed Germany, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. By night, the British four-engine Lancaster bombers. By day, the American flying fortresses. An air offensive, which since 1942, Bomber Harris's staff has made more and more effective. A 1,000-plane strike over Germany is a gigantic operation, timed to the last second. In the briefing room, the teams are told at the last moment their objective. Today, it's the Ruhr, the Happy Valley, as it's called. It's a difficult target, but at least it's not far away. Synchronize your watches. Depart 0510. 1 plane a minute. Thank you, and good luck. And 1,000 Boeing B-17s, the flying fortresses, take off from 20 different aerodromes scattered throughout the south of England. They rendezvous at 0630 over the Suffolk coast. Those who arrive first must circle and wait for the last to arrive. Everyone's here, let's go. Estimated time over the target, 0747. The 11 crew members are dry-mouthed. The pilot comes from Texas and has done scarcely 100 flying hours. He's been told, just follow the man in front of you and everything will be all right. The gunners are in the open air in a temperature of minus 30 degrees, numb with cold. 1 second's inattention and the German fighters will be on them at 400 miles an hour. After the Messerschmitts, they meet the anti-aircraft defenses, flak. No way of avoiding it. One must go straight through, trying to forget that 1 plane in 10 will not be coming back. Only the lucky could survive 30 missions before finishing their tour. At last, the target area. The bomb aimer takes his time. If he's unsuccessful, they'll have to make a second trip to this deadly place. Back at base, the ground crews who've been waiting for hours count the returning planes. First, the crippled ones. In the control tower, the urgent voices of the pilots come through on the radio. Short of fuel. Request priority. Landing gear jam. Request priority. 3 wounded on board. Request priority. Of the 11,000 American airmen who left this morning, how many will return to their bases? In a few months, the American Air Force has lost 4,700 men. Of British bomber crews, only 1 in 6 survive. Several Allied machines were outstanding. The Mosquito, a British 2-engine plane, faster than the German fighters. Made of wood and flying low, it could evade the radar screen. It climbed rapidly and destroyed its targets with pinprick accuracy. It lived up to its name. The Lightning, the Mustang, and the Thunderbolt were the long-range American escort fighters. Since the summer of '44, they've covered the bombers and savaged the German fighters. The Allies are inventing bigger and more powerful bombs. The British inventor Barnes-Wallis invents the Blockbuster, a 10-ton monster. Just one of these bombs is capable of destroying an entire factory. From the Ruhr to Silesia, German industry is in ruins. The Essen steelworks, the ball-bearing factories of Schweinfurt, the synthetic petrol refineries of Pollitz are reduced to twisted steel skeleton. But Air Marshal Harris is mistaken. the Air Force cannot win the war. Dispersed throughout Germany, machines are still turning, faster than ever. German industry has never been more productive. One man is responsible for this phenomenon, Albert Speer, 36 years old, an architect. Hitler had appointed him to reorganize German war production.
It was because I had found another system of organization. For example, under the military, production was directed purely by the officers who were responsible for the production of arms for the various forces, whereas I chose the most competent industrialists and the best technicians. And it was a new organization of technicians who were placed in charge of all the industry.
Yes, but given that there were so many Germans at the front, that there were so many taken prisoner, wounded or dead, how was it that in spite of everything, production was able to continue?
Naturally, it was a problem. We needed workers, and thousands were brought in. Thousands of workmen from the occupied countries at that time.
The German industrialists are pleased with Herr Speer and the Nazi Party, who furnish them with a free workforce, millions of forced workers and refugees. At the price of millions of lives, Germany multiplies her production of armaments tenfold, 41,000 guns, 8 times more than in 1940, and 27,000 tanks, 12 times more than in 1940. In the autumn of 1944, Hitler swears he won't be defeated. While his generals consider the war is lost and secretly dream of a separate peace with the Western Allies so that they can attack Russia together, Hitler thinks about a dramatic coup. The object of Hitler's plan is to take the port of Antwerp and to cut off the British forces in the north from the American forces in the south. For that, he wants to use the old invasion route, taken in 1914 and again in 1940, the Ardennes. Using this same route, Marshal von Rundstedt led the German armies as far as Paris in 1940, and Hitler chooses him again to command the offensive in the Ardennes, which is to become the von Rundstedt offensive. To keep an eye on this soldier of the old school, Hitler places one of his faithfuls, Marshal Model, a yes-man who never questions the Führer's orders. He entrusts the shock troops, the SS Panzer Army, to Sepp Dietrich, who is one of Hitler's oldest accomplices, a butcher boy become SS general. And to complete the team, General Asso Eckhard von Manteuffel, a former hussar, whose name is celebrated in the Wehrmacht and who commands the Fifth Army. At the beginning of December, 1,000 tanks and 200,000 men who form the attacking force assemble behind the front in greatest secrecy. Ironically, at this time, General Eisenhower summons a representative of each Allied nation. In front of them, he records his Christmas message in advance.
Speaking for the people of the United Nations, I should like to say, thank you, men. Now, a Merry Christmas to all of you. If it doesn't happen to be so very merry this year, next year, we'll be sure that it will be. Good luck to all of you.
On the night of December the 15th, 8 divisions of the Volksgrenadier and 5 Panzer divisions advance in line along a 75-kilometer front. While they're infiltrating across the Ardennes, the German soldier believes he will change the outcome of the war. a young officer commanding the leading squadron of the Panzer Lehr Division, Lieutenant Arist von Mullen.
I was part of the first line of attack here, and with my 3 armored cars and my 9 men, I had to take Bastogne, Saint-Hubert, Rochefort, and Dinant.
At 5:30 a.m., the Grenadiers attack. Objective, the River Meuse, 70 miles away. It must be taken in 3 days. The German retreat has halted. It's the end of humiliation. This is the Blitzkrieg all over again. American equipment is legendary, but the Volksgrenadiers are no longer afraid of American tanks, and they begin to count up the prospective booty. The Americans are taken completely by surprise. 10,000 men are surrounded. 8,000 are taken prisoner. The raw recruits of the 106th Infantry Division, who reached the front only 3 days before, have never been under fire. The veterans of the 28th Infantry Division had recently taken Aachen, where they lost 6,000 men. Cruel irony. They were sent to the Ardennes for a rest in a quiet sector. The SS are laughing again. They really are the master race. Colonel Piper's SS group doesn't take prisoners. It massacres them. 19 unarmed Americans at Hunsfeld in the morning. At midday, Piper's men order the 50 American guards at the Buringen fuel depot to fill their tanks, then machine gun them on the spot. Finally, in the afternoon, 125 American prisoners are waiting in a field at Bognes, close to Malmedy. A passing tank sees them, stops, and shoots them all. 86 dead. It was Sunday. Everyone had left for Mass at Malmedy, except the manageress of the cafe, Madame Baudave. The SS took her. No one ever saw her again. With the bodies of the 86 dead of Malmedy, the Americans experienced for the first time the horror of Nazi atrocities. It's a shock to the United States. With the news that Germany is again on the march, there is panic in Belgium. Across newly liberated Europe, from Liège to Namur, from Brussels to Reims, and from Reims to Paris, the news resounds like an alarm bell. There is chaos in the American lines. Regiments have lost their command posts. Communications are cut. Units circle aimlessly. Where are the Germans? Everyone is suspect, civilians and soldiers alike, friend or enemy. No one knows. There's a rumor that German paratroopers are disguised as American soldiers, and it's true. Colonel Skorzeni's commandos have infiltrated behind the lines in American uniform. Skorzeny, the specialist in surprise tactics. It was he who rescued Mussolini. He who kidnapped the Hungarian regent, Admiral Horthy. This time, Hitler has given him a very special mission, Operation Griffin.
C'était nécessaire de...
It was necessary to save at least 1 or 2 bridges on the Meuse. And it was my first task to take 2 intact bridges.
Deux ponts intacts.
And naturally, in order to get there in advance of the German army, we had to be disguised as allies.
De usagers, des uniformes américains.
In the American uniforms, we passed for American troops, with the object of arriving at the bridge, then changing out of American uniform and defending the bridge after we'd taken it in German uniform.
L'uniforme allemand.
Was that Hitler's idea?
Hitler personally?
Whose idea this was?
Yes.
Where did you find these uniforms?
Partiellement dans des camps de prisonniers.
Partly in the prison camps. They were found in the Allied shops, ones that had been retaken, near Paris, for example. There was a counter-offensive, and we found a big shop. But we only found 200 or 300.
You had American equipment, too.
Quelques camions, quelques jeeps.
Yes, a few trucks, a few jeeps, but I reserved those for a special commando unit who went up to the front on reconnaissance missions and to destroy the roads, bridges, fuel depots, etc.
Dépôts de gasoline, etc. Cette compagnie.
This company had specially trained men who spoke in perfect American idiom. The little habits of the American soldier, chewing gum, how to open a pack of cigarettes, how to offer a light, etc. These were the things my men learnt, because really details like that are the most important.
Les détails qui sont les plus importantes dans des cas comme ça.
There were only 300 German commandos, but in a message to all units, General Hodges, commander of the American First Army, decrees, thousands of Germans in American uniforms are operating behind our lines. The military police are ordered to stop all convoys, all officers, and all soldiers to verify their identity, and will unmask the spies by asking them specific American questions. For example, who won the World Series? Who is Dick Tracy? Who is Babe Ruth? In spite of special precautions, only 4 of Skorzeny's fake Americans were ever caught and executed. December the 18th, the 3rd day of the attack. In the center of the front, the armored troops of General von Manteuffel's grenadiers have succeeded in getting through and are marching on Bastogne. At the head of the Panzer Lehr division are the machine gunners of Lieutenant von Zurmulen.
We were advancing into the middle of the Americans' retreat. I reached Bastogne, and I saw that there was strong resistance. We couldn't just walk into the town.
In Bastogne, the young recruits of the American 28th Division hold out well under the avalanche. General Middleton, who commands the army group whose command post moved 4 times in 48 hours, decides to stay in the town whatever happens. But his troops are wiped out. The 110th Infantry Regiment, covering the town, has lost 2,750 men, its entire effective force. By the evening of December the 18th, Bastogne is on the point of falling. But at dawn, on the 19th, reinforcements arrive, the paratroopers. The 11,000 men of the 101st Airborne Division, who come from Reims and who have kept going all night. Veterans of the Normandy landings, they take on this suicidal mission to hold Bastogne against 3 German divisions. December the 19th, Eisenhower summons all the generals to Verdun: Bradley, Simpson, Patton, Devers, and Montgomery. His adjutant, General Bradley, was rather embarrassed.
I'd been saying to General Eisenhower and General Smith, his chief of staff, that I wished I could get him to counterattack and get him out in the open, because it'd be easier to kill them there than it would the way we'd been doing it in fortified villages. And of course, when it came and so strong, I remember Smith saying to me, "Well, there's your counterattack, Brad." And I said, "Yes, but I had no idea it could be this strong."
Field Marshal Montgomery sees the situation with British humor.
I sent the War Office a telegram, giving a story and saying what we were doing about it. And the last sentence read, "We can't come out through Dunkirk this time as the Germans hold that place."
Eisenhower doesn't even consider pulling out. On the contrary, he decides to counterattack and unfolds his plan. By the 4th day of the attack, Germany has advanced 20 miles. It's obvious now that the game is going to be played out around Bastogne. There's only one solution: to bring up Patton's 3rd Army, which is in Luxembourg, 65 miles to the south. Everything depends on them, and in particular on Patton, the Charger, the most talked about general in the American army. Admired by some, detested by others. He's made an incredible promise. He will make a 90-degree turn with his entire army to bring them facing the enemy in 3 days over 85 miles, in spite of the cold and frost. And on the 3rd day, December the 22nd, Patton pivots his men to the north towards Bastogne on the snow-covered roads of the Ardennes. December the 22nd, Patton is blocked by a snowstorm. Exasperated, he orders his chaplain to compose a special prayer for a change in the weather, saying, "Get God on our side," a prayer which the Allied airmen fully endorse. They've been grounded by bad weather since the start of the offensive. December the 22nd. In Bastogne, the paratroopers are still holding out after 3 days and nights of bitter fighting. In the morning, the front is calm for the first time under the snowstorm. But it's an uneasy calm. The night before, the paratroopers learned that Saint-Vite, the other point of resistance, has fallen. From now on, they are alone, completely alone and surrounded. All morning, the reconnaissance patrols look for the key. What are the Germans planning? They are there, all around, 5 divisions now. There can be no illusions. Unless there's a miracle, the paratroopers must die in defense of Bastogne. At midday, a patrol brings in 2 German officers to the divisional command post. They carry an ultimatum. They've arrived at the wrong moment. General McAuliffe was in command of the paratroopers.
They said, "We have a surrender demand from the German commander." And they handed me the paper, 1 copy in English, 1 in German. I took the English copy and read it. And after I read it, I just said nuts. So they went out and typed it up to the German commander, nuts, signed the American commander. And Colonel Harper, who had brought in the surrender demand, took that message back to the Germans and handed it to them and took them back to the outpost line. The German colonel said, If this reply is favorable, I have authority to conduct further negotiations having to do with the surrender. And Harper said, the reply is not favorable. It consists of the single word nuts. The German said, "I understand English, but I don't understand nuts in this connotation." Harper says, "It means the same as go to hell. Do you understand that?" And the German says, "Yes, I do."
December the 22nd, fateful day for the Germans. Bastogne is still resisting. Hitler hasn't foreseen that. Von Rundstedt was given 3 days to succeed in his offensive, and he's already 3 days late. The plan has miscarried. While 3 German divisions besiege Bastogne, 2 armored divisions, the 2nd Panzer and the Panzer Lehr, attack again in the west towards the River Meuse, and there's a further advance, 40 miles in 2 days. On December the 24th, the leading troops of Lieutenant von Zermühlen clashed with the British outside Roquefort.
I decided to attack there. My friend, who was commanding another group, was to attack on the other side, on my signal. I attacked. I sent up a rocket, but the others didn't come. I had to stop.
What happened?
Afterwards, I found my friend again. He told me that he had got bogged down in the mud. But long afterwards, he confessed to me that he'd been scared. He was afraid of the anti-tank guns, like those we'd seen in Russia.
What did you think of that?
I found it normal and human. He's still my friend.
The Panzer Lehr Division won't get further than this bridge. Their hearts are no longer in it. It's been a long road from Moscow to Bastogne.
Il y a une chose que nous refusions absolument.
There's one thing we refused absolutely. That was to learn the names of the new officers.
On voulait pas leur parler.
One didn't want to speak to them, to have a personal relationship, to start a friendship, because one knew that these young people, these very young people, without experience, had no chance of survival. It was best not to know them.
Il valait mieux pas les connaître.
So we old veterans kept to ourselves.
Les anciens,
How old were you?
20 ans.
20.
The next day is Christmas Day, a sad Christmas. For the English and Canadians, it's a truce. Time for a cup of tea. For the besieged defenders of Bastogne, this Christmas, the artillery pounding is the worst of the siege. For the Germans this Christmas, a cigarette, an American cigarette.
Depuis le 15 décembre,
No one had slept since December the 15th. We were able to rest on Christmas night.
mais le lendemain,
But the next day, there was a change in the weather.
le matin du 25 décembre,
On the morning of December the 25th, the sky was a clear blue, not a cloud,
pas un nuage.
and immediately the American Air Force attacked. It was absolutely terrible.
Ça a été absolument terrible.
Von Rundstedt had told Hitler, everything depends on the Air Force. He wasn't mistaken. For the defenders of Bastogne, it's just in time. They have no more shells and are on emergency rations when at last they see the waves of Dakotas. By the end of the next day, December the 26th, the advance guard of Patton's Armored Division, commanded by Colonel Crichton Abrams, breaks through the German circle and enters Bastogne. Thanks to the defenders of Bastogne, Saint-Vit, Malmedy, Uffalys, and Stavelot, von Rundstedt's offensive is held. On January the 1st, 1945, Hitler throws all his available planes into a last strike. 1,000 fighters and bombers are ordered to annihilate the Allied Air Force on the ground. The Allied pilots, who were celebrating the New Year at the time, take off in a rush. British Spitfires and American Thunderbolts bring down 300 planes in an air battle which lasts 5 hours. All 27 aerodromes in Belgium and Holland are caught in the surprise attack. How many Allied aircraft were destroyed or damaged on the ground that day? The Allies acknowledge 200. The Germans estimate 700. The truth is that Germans are still dangerous.